This will be for the con exercise, average rate of change, graphs, and tables. Okay, it says, over which interval does G have an average rate of change of 0? G is the function they are referring to. And they give us the intervals here for the variable t. Now, what do they mean by average rate of change? Well, that is just a slope. That's just a slope. And if you recall, for the slope, it's going to be change in y divided by change in x. All right, if you recall, this triangle is a Greek letter delta. That just means change in. And the change in y is y2 minus y1. The change in x is x2 minus x1. All right, so we have this table here. And the variable t is your x variable, and the g of t is your y variable. And how did I know that? Well, typically, x is the variable that gets inputted into the function. Okay, so this is t and this is g of t, which means you plug in t into the g function in order to get an output. So basically, the t is your x variable and the g of t is your y variable. All right, and we're looking to find slope, and we want to see where it has a slope, average rate of change, a slope of 0. So let's check. T is between -5 and 1. All right, so if we go on the t from -5 to 1, we can use that in the slope formula. All right, make sure you subtract in the same order. We'll do -5 minus 1. All right, and remember that's your x. So on the denominator, -5 minus 1. And now we want to get the respective y values for the change in y. That's going to be 6 minus -3. Make sure you subtract both of these in the same order. So 6 minus -3. 6 minus -3. Okay, watch your plus minus signs. 2 negatives in a row make it positive. 6 plus 3 is 9. -5 minus 1 is -6. They asked us where it was 0. This one is clearly not 0. Let's move on to the next one. Next interval is from 0 to 4. T is from 0 to 4. All right, here's the t column. And if we go from 0 to 4, on the change in x, because this is the x column, I'm going to do 0 minus 4. That's in the denominator. And the change in y, -2 minus 6. All right, I can tell already it's not 0. -2 minus 6 is -8. 0 minus 4 is -4. That's going to be a 2. That's not 0. By the way, if you wanted to do it the easier way, you would have gotten positive numbers if you did 4 minus 0 and 6 minus -2. All right, but it's not 0. Let's move on. Next interval is from 1 to 3. All right, so this is the x column. T is from 1 to 3. I'm going to do it the other way this time. Subtract the other way. I'll do 3 minus 1. That's for the change in x in the denominator. And then on the change in y, subtract the same way. 3 minus -3. 3 minus -3. The two negatives make it positive. 3 plus 3 is 6. 3 minus 1 is 2. That does not equal 0. All right, one more try. It's got to be answer D. This goes from -2 to 2. All right, I will subtract going up this time. 2 minus negative 2 for the change in x. 2 minus negative 2. And the respective y, 1 minus 1. And I think we got it. 1 minus 1 is 0. 2 negatives in a row make it positive. That's 0 over 4. That equals 0. So that's the one we wanted. Answer D. All right, answer D. All right, what is the average rate of change of the function f over the interval 3 to 4? Give an exact number. Okay, this interval is going to be the x values. Okay, and if the interval is from 3 to 4, it basically means x runs from 3 to 4. X is between 3 and 4, just so you know what that means. Really, you can say equal to as well, but no big deal. Anyhow, let's do the slope formula for x between 3 and 4. All right, this is the x column, clearly, and this is the y column between 3 and 4. All right, remember the slope. We said that was change in y over change in x. All right, when we said the change in x is between 3 and 4. I am going to subtract going up so I can get a positive. 4 minus 3 is your change in x. That's in the denominator. And the respective y, subtract in the same direction going up. Negative 1 minus negative 5. 2 negatives make it positive. Negative 1 plus 5 is 4. 4 minus 3 is 1, and 4 divided by 1 is just 4. All right, give an exact number. Well, that's 4. All right, what is the average rate of change over the interval negative 1 to 4? Again, these are the x values. All right, so let's go to the x-axis here. They called it t, but that's irrelevant. All right, x-axis, and we're going from negative 1 to 4. Here's the x-axis, is negative 2, 0. This is negative 1, and this here is 4. All right, we have to trace it to the actual graph. Let me move this up a little bit. All right, from negative 1 to 4, we need the slope. So if I trace this to the graph, it hits the graph right there. And this one's already on the graph. And we are finding the slope of that line right there. Okay, so remember the slope. That's going to be change in y over change in x. All right, let's get the y coordinates for the endpoints here. This y coordinate is at y equals 0. If you trace it to the y-axis, the first y coordinate is at y equals 0. And the x coordinate with that 0 is right here. All right, and that is x equals 4. All right, in case you missed that, the coordinates for this point are x equals 4 and y equals 0. All right, and the coordinates for this point here, the x-coordinate is negative 1. That was given in the problem. So it's minus negative 1. And the y-coordinate for this point here is clearly negative 7. So it's minus negative 7. Okay, in case you missed that, the coordinates for this point are negative 1, comma, negative 7. All right, so it's just slope. It's just slope, and I think I made a small mistake. All right, I built this equation a little bit incorrectly. Let's try again. For the change in y in the numerator, that's going to be 0 minus -7. 0 minus -7. And the change in x, 4 minus -1. 4 minus -1. Two negatives make it positive. 0 plus 7 is 7. Two negatives make it positive. 4 plus 1 is 5. So that is your slope between those 2 points. All right, so basically it's the slope of the line connecting those points. When there's a curve, the slope is always going to be changing. All right, give an exact number. I got 7/5 or 7/5. Over which interval does f of t have a negative average rate of change? Okay, pretty simple. You don't have to calculate, just draw it. These intervals are the x intervals, as always. So let's go from -9 to -8. All right, on the x-axis. The x-axis, -9 to -8. Trace that to the graph. All right, if we go to the graph, that's that point, and go to the graph. That is still that point. So connecting those points, what is the slope? Well, if the slope is just like that, that's a slope of 0. Okay, so that one is no good. That's not negative slope or negative rate of change. Let's try -5 to -1. X-axis, here's -5. X-axis, here's -1. This one's already on the graph. This one, if we trace x equals -1 to the graph, and these 2 points, if you connect them, that goes up and to the right. That is a positive slope, so that one's no good. We're looking for negative. -8 to -2 on the x-axis, right here. -8 to -2, trace it to the graph. All right, lands on the graph right there. -2 lands on the graph right there. If you connect them, that's flat. That's a slope of 0. That one is no good. Finally, 2 to 4. All right, this has to be it. Negative slope. X equals 2. X equals 4. This one's on the graph. This one we trace up, and it lands right there. If we travel from 2 to 4, that is clearly downhill, down and to the right. That is a negative slope. So that's it right there. Answer D, 2 to 4.